Tuned in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So to get started, we're going to come into a child's pose. And that might not seem like it's a big pose to help out with the ankles, but it certainly can. So um, go ahead and bring the knees out nice and wide and bring the big toes to touch. And as you do that, you'll notice that you automatically start to point the toes. So, the main ways that we use the ankle are we point and flex the toes, and that kind of moves the ankle joint there. So go ahead and come into your child's pose. Start to lower yourself down. Bring the heart and the chest down to the mat. Fingertips can start to walk out towards the top of your mat. Maybe the forehead even comes down. And we'll just take a few moments to settle in and ground down here before we find some deeper movement in the body. Maybe here in this child's pose is the very first time that you're kind of paying attention to your breath, taking deep, conscious breaths. And take three more deep rounds of breath in this child's pose. Maybe you even allow yourself to exhale deeply through the mouth. Just three deep sighs. And as we begin to think about finding movement in the body again, I just want you to bring your awareness down into the ankles and just notice how you're feeling. And I'm gonna use that phrase, bring your awareness down into the ankles, a lot through this class. And I think it's very natural for many of us to automatically skip over the ankles and start to bring awareness into the feet, where we tend to find a lot more sensation. That's okay. Just continually bring that awareness back into the ankles. On your next inhale, slowly start to rise up through the torso, through the chest, walk the fingertips in towards the knees. We'll go ahead and bring the knees in towards one another and then start to curl the toes under. So we'll walk the fingertips a little bit farther forward as if you were coming into a tabletop. And then we'll curl the toes under. And as we curl the toes under, really try to connect all 10 toes down into the mat. As you do that, you might start to sink the hips back a little bit towards the heels. And this is actually a really great stretch for the plantar fasciitis, the soles of your feet. But it also brings your ankles into the second range of motion that we often use. So, not pointing the toes, but flexing the toes back. So, really stretching the ankles in that way. You have the option of staying here. Again, this can be really intense in the feet, or you have the option of walking the hands up a little bit, bringing the shoulders to stack over the hips. Again, as much as you can, be keeping that awareness in the ankles, maybe noticing if the ankles are finding any movement, if you feel the legs moving in and out, if you're placing more weight into the pinky edge side of the foot or the big toe. And that sounds like a foot thing, but it's really the stabilization in your ankles starting to make movements into the foot. Take two more breaths where you are. And then exhale. Slowly start to bring the fingertips back down to the mat if they're not already there. And we'll start to lift the hips up, lift the knees, find a forward fold, and that might feel really nice. You can walk the hands in a little bit more towards the legs. As you bend the knees deeply, allow the torso to hang over the feet. I'm sorry, over the legs. Again, bring your awareness into your ankles here. So this probably feels like neutral. It's a very natural position. The ankles are probably very stable here. So maybe notice what that feels like. And with your next inhale, breath press into the feet. Reach the arms up overhead all the way, full body stretch. And exhale, hands can come into heart center for a full deep round of breath. And then maybe you allow the hands to drop down by your sides as you take a mountain pose. And as you take your mountain's pose, really root down through the feet. Maybe you allow your awareness to sink into the four corners of the feet for just a moment. And then again, bring that awareness up into the ankles. And again, this is natural. This is how we stand. This is how we start to walk or run. So the ankles feel strong here. Rooting down into the right foot. Allow the left knee to start to rise up. So when that left knee lifts, two things are happening. One, you're placing all of your weight into the right foot, which means the ankle is naturally starting to work a little bit harder to stabilize. So you might feel yourself wobbling here. That balance that you're always trying to achieve is really coming from ankle strength and stability here. So that is one piece of it. The second piece is now what is happening with the left ankle. So naturally, you might start to drop the toes and kind of find that point of the foot. Maybe that's neutral for you. Or maybe you keep the foot flexed as if it was still pressing down into the ground. Maybe that's neutral. So we'll just go ahead and start to point and flex the toes. So left toes start to point down towards the ground. You might feel a stretch across the top of the foot or the top of the ankle. And then you'll start to point the toes, pull the toes back towards the face. And again, you might feel a stretch across the sole of the foot or maybe even the back of the calf at this point. Take a few rounds of breath to just point and flex the foot here. And again, this is a movement that we do, hundreds, if not thousands of times during our run. So this is relatively, I don't want to say simple because it's a really complex movement and there's a lot of stuff happening in your foot right now. But it's a relatively natural movement for us. And then from there, go ahead and start to make circles with the toes. So maybe you start by bringing the left toes in towards the center and then around. You might feel some pops or cracks here. So I don't know if any of you have sprained ankles before, but I certainly have. So the leg that I'm actually standing on right now, my right leg, I've sprained before. So it makes balancing hard on this ankle, right? The tendons and the muscles have to work a little bit harder. Go ahead and send those circles in the opposite direction. All right, and then go ahead and stop. Start to bring that left knee out. Bring the left toes down towards the right ankle. So the left toes can come down to the mat. The heel can come up towards the shin. As we come into this modified trees pose, so this is one of many variations that you can take in tree pose. Sometimes you'll see people take their left foot up towards the calf or towards the right inner thigh. We're going to keep the toes on the ground for this one because I really want you to feel the right ankle and what it's doing as it's balancing. So you'll be able to press that left heel or left foot into the right ankle, and you'll probably feel that balance, that wobble from side to side. Maybe you allow arms to reach up overhead here. Maybe you even allow yourself to close your eyes. And it's that closing of the eyes that will really start to challenge your balance. You'll really start to feel that ankle kind of wobble from side to side. Again, strengthening and challenging a lot of the muscles, the ligaments, the tendons that keep the ankle stabilized. Exhale, slowly release the left foot back down to the mat. Allow your eyes to close, find mountain pose. Again, bring that awareness down into the ankles. What are you feeling on this side? You might be feeling a lot of different things throughout the right leg and the sole of the foot as well, but can you kind of pinpoint that into what the ankle is feeling? If you're somebody who has sprained that ankle before, it might be tired. You might be able to kind of feel that tiredness in the ankle. It's something that I felt a lot after I sprained that ankle. We'll go ahead and take that over to the other side. So this time you're down into the left foot. You'll feel the right leg start to lift up. Again, notice the two things happening, right? That left ankle starts to stabilize. You might feel that balance, that wobble in the left leg. And then what's happening with the right foot? Are the toes dropping down towards the mat, pointing the toes, or are the toes peeling up back towards the face as you flex the toes? And again, I say flex the toes, but you're really pointing and flexing the ankle joint, right? You're really moving that joint, allowing the toes to point and flex. And you find a few rounds of breath pointing and flexing here. You might even notice that the right ankle is still a little wobbly and shaky because it's tired. You just balanced on it for a little bit on the other side. Maybe it's just me. Goodness. And then go ahead and start to find circles with the ankle. And if you've been in my classes before, you know I do this all the time. Making circles with the ankle is a really good way to not only strengthen some of the ligaments and the tendons that surround the ankle, but also just warm up the ankle, particularly before you start running. And maybe you make those circles in the opposite direction. And then go ahead and stop with the circle. Start to bend the right knee out towards the right. Bring the right toes down towards the left ankle. Again, toes are planting on the mat for stability. So that way we're not putting too much balance into that left leg right now. There's still a soft bend in the left knee. And then start to feel into that left ankle. Notice deeply how it's shaking, how it might be moving. Maybe arms sweep up overhead. Maybe eyes close. Maybe that changes the balance entirely, and you feel that left ankle working a little bit more through the sole of the right foot. Exhale, slowly lower the right foot down to meet the left. Arms can sweep down by your sides. And take a moment to send awareness down into the ankles. How is that left ankle feeling? Rooting down into the feet. Really start to notice how the toes are feeling. Connect through the balls of the foot as you start to lift the heels up. So now we're coming to balance on the toes. And again, while I'm kind of putting the emphasis on the toes here, I want you to bring that awareness into the ankles. What is happening here? Again, you'll probably feel that shake from side to side. Maybe you notice a little bit more weight kind of falls into the pinky edge side of the foot or the big toe. Again, that's all the ankles moving forward or from side to side, excuse me. You have the option of staying here, or for an added challenge, maybe hands come into heart center and you slowly start to bend the knees and sink the hips down a little bit. Maybe you keep going until the sit bones reach the heels and you come back to find that supported hero's pose or modification of hero's pose where the toes are curled under, the sit bones are now on the heels, shoulders stacking over hips. And then exhale, slowly bring the fingertips down to the ground. Uncurl the toes. Let the tops of the feet connect down to the mat. Bring the sit bones back down to the feet. And just notice how it feels to have the feet pointed again. So the ankles are in their flexion. And shoulders can stack over hips. And then go ahead and allow the hips to lift and the legs to sweep out to one side. And we'll come into a seat. So this last variation, and I'm hoping you can see my feet here. I'm gonna kind of switch back a little bit so they'll be on the mat, so hopefully you can. So normally when we would come into this pose, this is into this Dandasana stack pose, we would reach the fingertips all the way up overhead and then find a forward fold. Instead of doing that today, we're gonna bring the fingertips to frame the hips. We're still gonna find that nice deep length in the spine. That's perfect. But then instead, we're going to point the toes. So feel the toes start to pull back towards the face a little bit. And then we're going to start to turn the pinky edge toe or the pinky toes towards one another. So the soles of the feet are trying to wrap in towards one another. Inhale, bring that in through center. And then start to peel the pinky edge sides of the toes out as if the heels were trying to move, or the soles of the feet were trying to move away from one another. It's not going to be a big movement. So this is helping to explore the other range of motion the ankle has, which it doesn't have a big range of motion, right? So we point and flex the ankle a lot. We don't move the ankle from right to left a lot. There's a reason for that, because when we do that and we do it too much, we often roll our ankle or sprain our ankle. So this is kind of exploring that motion in a safe way and allowing you to kind of feel what the ankles might be doing here. Toes are still pointing back towards the face. You're just gently allowing the soles of the feet to come together and then slowly open out away from each other. You might do that for a few more rounds of breath. You might find that the ankles feel a little bit tired as you're doing this. Again, it's not something that you probably do very often. You probably thought the first 10 or 15 minutes of this class was much easier than this probably feels right now. And then once you're done with that, maybe you just take a few moments to make circles with the ankle again. I find that really just loosens things up and brings them back to kind of a neutral feeling. Maybe you point and flex the toes a little bit. And that is our ankle practice.